Now to the other love of NCCS, humpback whales. For decades, humpback research in the BC Scary Array followed the same pattern as orca research, plenty of work being done in the Gulf of Alaska and Puget Sound, but no one knew what was going on in between. NCCS filled that gap too. Every year, the North Coast humpbacks migrate between their summer feeding grounds in the BC fjords and their breeding grounds around Hawaii, from glaciated zone to volcanic seamounts and back again. These whales are constantly nerding out on geology. It turns out you can find higher densities of humpbacks around Whale Point than anywhere else on the coast. Janie has compiled a catalog of 160 humpback whales that return consistently to these waters each summer. Janie knows them all by name. You can use the unique patterns on their tail flukes to identify individuals. The general shape of the flukes, the coloration patterns, and the bumps along the trailing edge, as well as the depth of the central divot, it's all unique. The Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans gives each identified whale a catalog code, but Janie prefers assigning them some more memorable names. This one, Slash, is named after the huge white scar on its right fluke. Little Teeth still bears the scars from a run-in with a transient orca as a calf. If you get that this photo is of the fluke's topside, you can see why this one is called Lefty. Amy, named after the daughter of Janie's friend, is the most commonly seen whale in the area. Janie has encountered and photographed Amy 52 times. Amy exhibits exceptional philopatry, or site loyalty, and is one of the first whales to arrive each year and one of the last to go. And here are a few newcomer whales that I was given the honor and responsibility of naming. I had a lot of fun with it. Here's Sea Lion. Her right fluke looks like the profile of a sea lion, eye and all. The markings at the center of this fluke reminded me of the Batman villain. And here's Trotsky. You can see the hammer and sickle in the center of its fluke. And here's Rift. The symmetry of her tail reminded me instantly of a diagram of seafloor spreading. A neat corporeal manifestation of the geology of whales. And I named this one Monstro because I've always wanted to name a whale that. And I named this one Elliot after a friend from Swanee who also loves whales. And I named this one Frankenwhale for obvious reasons. By far the best place for seeing humpbacks in the study area is Kamano Sound. Kamano Sound is at the intersection of several fjord valleys, whose glaciers all converged here and plowed out into the open Pacific as a superglacier. If we could drain Kamano Sound, we would see something like this, an amphitheater of hanging valleys, each funneling and mixing nutrients into a giant, bioproductive cauldron, each summer attracting herring by the millions. It's the perfect recipe for attracting whales, a steaming, teeming humpback's brew, another link between geology and the whale. There is so much food in Kamano Sound that the humpback whales team up to go after it, using a technique called bubble net feeding. For all of July and August, for every minute of daylight every day, a select team of whales was feeding, bellowing at the top of their lungs as they hunted, like stressed out elephants. Their trumpets rang throughout camp 18 hours a day. Their feeding calls were our morning alarm clocks and our bedtime lullabies. There was no escaping their frenzy. The Kamano feeding group is an all-star cast of the coast's best and brightest. There's Amy, the most commonly seen whale, the shapely Kamano, named for her favorite restaurant. And then there's Hook, Drop, and Smiley, and Cup too. And Cloudy, young and headstrong, and, finally, the team captain, Jupiter, thunderous and vengeful. It's a banner cast, and they put on quite a show. This is what they do. We'll begin at the surface, where the team has worked itself into a frenzy. They have flushed a shoal of herring into a corner in the hanging valley that is buttressing Kamano Sound from below. The bubble net feed begins when the captain, Jupiter, and a co-captain, usually Cup, turn up their tails for a dive. The others mill at the surface for a few moments, then, all at once, they go down too. For almost a minute, there is nothing but silence. Haunting, deafening silence. You are there in your research vessel, wondering what exactly is going on below, where exactly they might be. They could come up anywhere. And then, suddenly, you hear the feeding call, amplified through the hull of the boat. When you are that close, you don't need a hydrophone to hear it. And the sound grows louder now. Below, the humpbacks have dived under the shoal of herring and are slowly herding them up to the surface. They move with precise coordination, using the white of their pectoral fins and bellies as blinders, confusing the terrified herring into globs of complacent meat. They circle as they rise, in ever-tightening formation. As they do so, one whale, lingering a little shallow, releases a steady stream of bubbles, which the fish perceive to be an impenetrable wall. It's a sinister trick. Jupiter's feeding call also acts as a net of sound. Ambushed by flippers, bubbles, and moans, the fish have no escape. From above, the bubbles surface to reveal the mathematical perfection of their hunt. And then, suddenly, the feeding call stops. That means they are about to surface. Silence again, all the more awful now, and you wait with bated breath. Suddenly, where you least suspect it, the whales explode at the surface. It is the apocalypse. Their mouths are wide open, the expandable pleats of their throats have ballooned grotesquely, and the herring are all trapped inside. It looks like living chaos. It is diabolical. And then, before even you have a chance to catch your breath, Jupiter and Cup are diving again. It goes on like this all day. Fish breath and aching silence, feeding calls and paroxysms. Sea lions, Dall's porpoises, and bald eagles are all there to pick up the scraps, to join in on the frenzy. It is a merciless potluck. Sometimes the whales would surface uncomfortably close to us, and I would wonder if they ever think to look up before they charge. I have my doubts, because one day I saw one of these all-stars caught up in the moment run straight into a small fishing boat. The whale let out a huge honk of surprise, and the boat nearly capsized. The bubble net. On this grandiose note, it is only fitting to switch over to our other case study, the blue whales of Chile's southern fjords. Think for a moment about the largest animal to have ever lived. She weighs as much as a town of 2,000 people. Every day she eats more than a ton of food. Her heart, which is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, that's 2 tons, pumps 60 gallons of blood per beat. A child could swim through her central arteries. The surface of her tongue is 64 square feet in area and weighs over 2 tons. Her tongue! This is what the blue whale does to the human mind, gets it figuring in tons and towns and automobiles and synecdoche, but all to no avail. Even with such illustrative measurements, little can be done to convey life at this scale. This brings us right back to the geology of whales, because the very same can be said for the geological forces that govern this planet. Both fields deal with the unfathomable. In both fields, numbers fail to convey the vastness of their subject. Attempting to comprehend the scale of the blue whale, or that of geologic time, both result in the same awestruck paralysis. It's all just too big to mean anything. Geology and cetology are both preoccupied with nature's superlatives. Geology is concerned with nature's most destructive, eruptive, unyielding, and transformative forces. As living, breathing hyperboles, cetaceans are a superlative in their own way. Whales are the geologic analogues of the biosphere. Their breath is a volcanic eruption. Their calls are as ominous and rumbly as the earthquakes of deep oceanic trenches. Many writers have cut right to the chase and described whales as landmasses. One has referred to the blue whale as the Everest of whales. Seeing one in person and up close is all one needs to get it. The waves that break along her blue, mottled shores give the whale a geographical aspect. There are no pictures of blue whales, only maps. Geology and whales, polarized ultimacies, the alpha and the omega of natural history. So yes, there is something geological about the whale, even if the ecological connection between the two is not all that intimate. But ecology does not incorporate human meaning or fancy into its equations, and that is precisely where this connection is strongest. It is the whale as an idea that trembles our world and our worldviews, and it is there, in the realm of human curiosity, that the two are inextricably entwined.